The night air over Alexandria was heavy with salt and secrets. The waves crashed against the ancient shoreline as four shadows moved silently through the ruins, their footsteps crunching over centuries of buried history. Dr. Elena Marquez tightened her grip on the old parchment in her hand, the letter that had brought her here, sealed with the emblem of a scarab surrounded by 7 rays. It had arrived mysteriously at her Madrid apartment weeks ago, containing nothing but cryptic coordinates and a single phrase: "The library never burned." Elena had spent her entire career chasing myths about the Great Library of Alexandria. For centuries, historians believed Julius Caesar's fire destroyed it in 48 BCE, erasing nearly 1,000,000 scrolls of priceless knowledge. But this letter promised something different, that the library's most dangerous secrets had been hidden, not lost. Tonight, she would find out the truth. Behind her walked Dr. Tariq Hassan, an Egyptian archaeologist whose family had been excavating Alexandria for generations. Beside him was Professor Samuel Reed, a brilliant but eccentric linguist capable of deciphering nearly any ancient script. Trailing slightly behind, scanning the shadows with soldier's precision, was Jonas Falk, an ex-military operative turned explorer. Each of them had been drawn here for different reasons, but all shared the same obsession: uncovering the forbidden knowledge whispered about in legends. The ruins opened into a narrow stone stairway descending into darkness. Tariq lit a torch, its flickering light revealing carvings along the walls, spirals, suns, and serpents etched by hands older than recorded history. Samuel ran his fingers across the symbols, his brow furrowing in concentration. "This isn't Greek," he murmured. "Not even classical Egyptian. It's something older, something hybrid. A language made to hide meaning, not reveal it." The air grew colder as they descended, the silence broken only by dripping water somewhere in the depths. After what felt like an eternity, the stairs ended at a colossal obsidian door, carved with twin serpents devouring their own tails. At its center was an inlaid golden eye of Horus, glowing faintly as though alive. Elena stepped closer, feeling the weight of centuries pressing against her chest. Above the doorway, Samuel deciphered an inscription etched in faded red pigment. His voice trembled slightly as he translated: "He who opens these gates accepts the burden of forbidden truths. Wisdom grants power, but power demands sacrifice." Jonas glanced at Elena. "That's not exactly welcoming," he muttered. She ignored him, pressing her hands against the golden seal. With a deep groan, mechanisms older than empires shifted within the stone. Dust cascaded as the door cracked open, releasing a breath of air trapped for millennia. Beyond lay a vast underground hall, lit by crystalline orbs embedded in the ceiling, ancient technology still functioning after 2,000 years. Hundreds of stone shelves lined the chamber, filled with scrolls sealed in resin-coated jars, untouched by time. At the very center of the hall, on a raised pedestal, lay a single object under a glass dome, a black papyrus scroll bound in gold thread. Its surface shimmered faintly, absorbing the torchlight instead of reflecting it. Elena's heart pounded as she approached. Samuel placed a hand on her arm. "Wait, look at the protective sigils. This isn't preservation, this is containment." But Elena ignored him. Her fingers brushed against the smooth glass. The instant her skin touched it, her mind exploded with visions. She saw oceans boiling under a red sun, entire civilizations rising and crumbling into dust, towers of impossible height shattered by shadows stretching across alien skies. She gasped and staggered backward, clutching her head as Samuel and Jonas caught her. "Elena!" Tariq shouted. Her breath came in ragged bursts as she whispered, "It showed me everything, the rise and fall of worlds, the price of forbidden knowledge." Before anyone could respond, a low rumble shook the chamber. Across the walls, glyphs began to glow with blinding light as ancient defense systems activated. Hidden stone panels slid open in massive humanoid constructs, sandstone guardians carved in the likeness of forgotten gods, emerged, their eyes burning blue fire. Jonas raised his flashlight, muttering, "Oh, hell no." The guardians moved slowly but with unstoppable force, their footsteps shaking the ground. Elena clutched the black papyrus against her chest as Jonas pulled her toward an open corridor. "Run!" he barked. The team sprinted through collapsing tunnels, their torches flickering wildly as stone crashed around them. Behind them, the guardians' deep, mechanical roars reverberated through the labyrinth. At last, they stumbled into a side passage and burst into the open air, gasping for breath beneath the starlit Egyptian sky. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Then Samuel, still shaking, turned to Elena. "We shouldn't have taken it," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Whatever that scroll contains, it was sealed away for a reason. We were never meant to see it." Elena met his gaze, her expression resolute. "The truth isn't meant to be hidden," she said. "If the Great Library never burned, then someone wanted us to believe it did. That someone is still out there, and they've been protecting these secrets for 2,000 years." Far above, a drone-like hum filled the air. Jonas instinctively raised his weapon, scanning the horizon, but saw nothing. Tarek frowned. "That wasn't from the ruins," he whispered. None of them noticed the faint glimmer of red lights watching from the cliffs beyond. And somewhere deep beneath the sands of Alexandria, in chambers untouched by time, mechanisms continued to move, resetting traps that had been dormant for centuries. The library had been breached, and forces older than empires had awakened. The night in Alexandria was restless. Distant waves crashed against the rocky coast while the city above slept unaware of what had been awakened beneath its foundations. In a small rented villa near the harbor, Elena sat on the balcony, staring at the black papyrus sprawled across the table before her. Its surface pulsed faintly, as if breathing. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw fragments of the visions again: burning skies, collapsing monuments, and creatures whose forms defied human comprehension. Jonas paced behind her, restless and alert. "I don't like this," he muttered, glancing at the locked shutters. "We woke something up down there. I felt it. And if we found that scroll, someone else knows we found it." Samuel sat opposite Elena, his fingers tracing symbols in his notebook, scribbling interpretations with growing frustration. "It's not written in any single language," he said. "It's layered. Egyptian mixed with Sumerian, some Proto-Indo-European structures, and something older still, something I don't recognize at all." He stopped, rubbing his temple. "It's almost as if this script wasn't meant to be read by humans." Tarek leaned against the wall, arms folded. "We should put it back," he said firmly. "The Library of Alexandria has been lost for 2,000 years for a reason. It wasn't destroyed, it was hidden. By people, or forces, powerful enough to erase it from history." Before Elena could reply, a sharp knock rattled the villa door downstairs. Jonas froze, motioning for silence. The team exchanged uneasy glances as Jonas crept to the window and peered down. Two black SUVs sat parked on the quiet street below, their engines humming softly. A group of 5 figures in dark tactical gear moved toward the door, their faces obscured by visors. "Not locals," Jonas whispered. "Gears too advanced. We've been tracked." Before anyone could respond, the door exploded inward, wood splintering under the force of a battering ram. Jonas grabbed Elena, shoving her behind a marble pillar as muffled shouts in an unfamiliar language echoed through the villa. Tarek ducked behind an overturned table, Samuel clutched his notebook, and Jonas drew a compact pistol from his jacket. Gunfire erupted, muffled but deafening in the narrow corridors. Jonas returned 2 sharp shots, forcing their attackers to take cover, buying the team precious seconds. "Out the back," he shouted. Elena snatched the black papyrus, shoving it into her satchel, and the group darted through the kitchen door into the alley beyond. The night air was heavy with humidity and diesel fumes as they sprinted down a labyrinth of narrow streets, footsteps echoing off ancient stone walls. Behind them, the attackers fanned out, moving in perfect synchronization, too disciplined to be mercenaries, too silent to be police. Jonas cursed under his breath. "They're professionals." The chase ended abruptly when a sleek black drone swooped low overhead, its red sensor scanning the alley. Jonas raised his weapon but Elena yanked him aside just as the drone unleashed a burst of electromagnetic static, frying the street lamps and plunging the alley into darkness. Through the chaos, one of the attackers shouted something in an ancient dialect Samuel recognized instantly. His blood ran cold. "Elena," he whispered breathlessly, "they're speaking Akkadian." She frowned. "That's impossible. Akkadian's been dead for 3,000 years. "Not for them," he said grimly. "They called us trespassers." The team managed to shake their pursuers, ducking into a crumbling warehouse by the docks. Inside, surrounded by broken crates and shattered glass, they caught their breath as the sound of distant sirens faded. Jonas checked the doors, setting up makeshift barricades. Elena carefully unwrapped the black papyrus under the faint glow of Samuel's flashlight. The script seemed to shift as she stared at it, lines rearranging themselves as though alive. Samuel muttered translations under his breath, piecing fragments together. When the gates are opened, the keepers awaken. The codex shall lead to the eternal flame. Knowledge brings dominion, but the price is memory. The codex, Tarek repeated. What codex? Samuel shook his head slowly. I think this scroll is only a map to something even greater. He hesitated, his voice dropping lower. The Forbidden Library isn't the library we think it is. This is just one wing. There's another chamber, deeper. Before they could digest his words, Jonas's comm device crackled faintly. Static hissed, then a distorted voice came through, cold and mechanical. Return what you've taken, or you will not leave Alexandria alive. The room fell silent. No one moved. Then Elena stood, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. Who are you? She demanded into the comm. A pause. Then the voice replied. We are the custodians. The library was sealed by us. Your trespass has been noted. The knowledge you hold cannot exist in the wrong hands. Samuel swallowed hard. Custodians of what? He whispered, but the transmission ended abruptly. Jonas muttered a curse and smashed the comm device against the wall. They're tracking us somehow. We need to move. Hours later, they regrouped at a safe house near the old harbor. Tarek spread out maps of Alexandria while Samuel cross-referenced ancient star charts on his tablet. Slowly, a picture began to form, an alignment of constellations, temples, and subterranean passages converging on one point beneath the ruins of the Serapeum. That's where the second chamber is, Elena said, tracing her finger across the map. The Forbidden Wing, the real library. But Jonas wasn't convinced. And what happens when we get there? You saw what those things were in the tunnels. And now we've got trained killers with ancient languages chasing us. Whatever's down there, people have been dying to keep it buried. Elena met his gaze firmly. Then why send me this? She held up the original scarab-sealed letter. Someone wanted us to find it. Silence fell over the room. Outside, the distant hum of engines echoed faintly in the night, growing louder by the minute. Samuel looked out the window, his face pale. They've found us, he whispered. From the shadows beyond the safe house, dozens of red lights blinked into existence, drones, advancing silently. And standing behind them, barely visible, were more of the black-clad figures. Elena tightened her grip on the papyrus. The knowledge of the ancients was within reach, but so was something far older, and far deadlier, than any of them had imagined. The walls of the safe house trembled under the growing hum outside. Elena's pulse quickened as she peered through the cracked shutters. Dozens of red-eyed drones hovered in the street, their blades slicing through the humid Alexandrian night. Behind them stood nearly 20 black-clad figures, the same custodians who had stormed their villa earlier, their movements unnervingly precise, like extensions of a single will. Jonas cocked his weapon, checking the chamber. We can't hold this position, he said flatly. We need to move. Now. Samuel stuffed his notebook into his satchel while Tarek hastily rolled up the ancient maps. Elena clutched the black papyrus scroll tightly, its surface faintly warm against her palm. It felt alive. She couldn't shake the sensation that the scroll was aware of them, guiding them. Jonas kicked open the back door, motioning for them to follow. Stick close. No sound. They slipped into the narrow alley, shadows dancing across weathered limestone walls. The drones passed overhead, their scanning beams sweeping methodically. Jonas led them through a maze of twisting streets, his movements sharp and deliberate, until they reached the old quarter where Alexandria's ruins bled into the modern city. The team ducked inside an abandoned warehouse, panting. Jonas barred the door with a rusted metal pipe while Samuel wiped sweat from his forehead. This can't go on, Samuel whispered, his voice shaking. They're not going to stop. They're protecting something, Elena replied, catching her breath. Something more important than the library itself. Tarek pulled out the scarab-sealed letter that had first brought Elena here, examining it under the pale light from a cracked window. This symbol, he said, pointing to the 7 rays around the scarab, it doesn't belong to any known Egyptian dynasty. But I've seen it once before, carved beneath the ruins of the Serapeum. Samuel's eyes widened. The Serapeum, he echoed, recalling the colossal subterranean temple dedicated to Serapis, the Greco-Egyptian god of knowledge and resurrection. If the scroll's directions point anywhere, it's there. Elena spread out the ancient star charts Samuel had partially translated. Lines of constellations intersected perfectly beneath a symbol marked in crimson ink, a spiral beneath the temple ruins. "That's the gateway," she said. "That's where we'll find the forbidden wing." Before anyone could respond, Jonas raised his hand sharply. A faint metallic whir echoed from somewhere above them. "Drones," he mouthed. The team killed their lights, holding their breath as a crimson scanning beam swept across the cracked windows. The sound of clicking servos filled the silence, growing louder, then stopped. The drone moved on. Jonas exhaled quietly. "We leave at dawn." The Serapeum. First light. The next morning, a pale sun rose over Alexandria as the team made their way through ancient streets toward the Serapeum ruins, hidden beneath layers of dust and neglect. Tariq's contacts had arranged access through a forgotten service tunnel, one known only to local archaeologists. The entrance was buried beneath a collapsed courtyard, sealed behind rusted iron gates etched with strange, looping patterns, more sigils of protection. As Tariq unlocked the gate, Samuel traced his fingertips over the markings. "These aren't Egyptian," he murmured. "This is older. Much older." The narrow tunnel descended steeply into the earth, the air growing cooler with each step. Their flashlights revealed worn hieroglyphs along the walls, partially erased as though deliberately defaced. "Someone didn't want this knowledge remembered," Tariq whispered. After nearly half an hour, they reached a massive stone door sealed by intricate mechanisms. In its center was an inlaid golden disc, etched with concentric rings of symbols. Samuel crouched before it, scanning the glyphs while Jonas stood watch. "It's a cipher," Samuel muttered, pulling out his notebook. "3 rings, interlocking phrases. If I align these correctly, the mechanism should unlock." Minutes passed in tense silence, broken only by the distant dripping of water. Then, with a deep, resonant thud, the door began to shift, stone grinding against stone. A rush of cold air burst forth as the gateway opened, revealing a spiraling staircase carved from obsidian descending into the earth. They descended cautiously, torches flickering against polished walls etched with incomprehensible symbols. At the base, the staircase opened into an enormous subterranean chamber, larger than any they'd seen before. Shelves of ancient scrolls lined the walls, but these were unlike any preserved knowledge they'd encountered. Some were written on thin metallic sheets that shimmered faintly under torchlight. Others were encased in crystal, their contents pulsing faintly, as though alive. At the center of the chamber stood a massive circular pedestal engraved with unfamiliar runes. Resting atop it was an artifact unlike anything they'd ever seen, a smooth obsidian tablet, perfectly rectangular, its surface reflecting no light. Samuel approached cautiously, fingers trembling. "This must be it," he whispered. "The Codex Eterna." Elena stepped forward, her voice hushed. "The Eternal Codex," she breathed. "This is what they've been protecting." As Samuel's hands hovered above the surface, a ripple of faint energy shimmered across the chamber walls. Symbols etched in the stone flared with pale blue light, illuminating pathways that led deeper into the ruins. But before anyone could speak, a sudden roar echoed behind them. The custodians had found them. Dozens of the black-clad figures flooded the staircase, their weapons raised. Jonas immediately drew his sidearm and fired, bullets sparking harmlessly against their strange armor. One of the custodians raised a curved obsidian blade and shouted a single word in a language older than civilization. The chamber itself responded. The ground trembled violently as portions of the floor collapsed, revealing chasms beneath. A low hum reverberated through the air, growing louder until it became a deafening vibration. The codex pulsed, releasing a burst of blinding white light that flung several custodians back against the walls. Elena clutched the pedestal, shouting over the chaos. "It's responding to us." Samuel, scanning the codex's inscriptions, shouted back, "It's not responding, it's activating." One custodian lunged forward, striking Jonas across the shoulder with brutal force. Jonas staggered but retaliated, disarming his attacker with a swift counterstrike. Tariq grabbed Elena, dragging her toward one of the glowing side tunnels. "We have to go. Now." But Elena hesitated, her gaze locked on the codex. The artifact's surface was shifting, rearranging itself into new symbols every second. For a brief moment, she thought she recognized a pattern, a map of the stars, but not Earth's. "Leave it," Jonas roared, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward the passage. Behind them, the custodians regrouped, chanting in unison as the chamber's remaining floor plates began to seal shut. The team barely made it through the side tunnel before a massive slab of stone slammed down behind them, sealing the chamber off completely. They stumbled into darkness, their breaths ragged. Samuel leaned against the wall, shaking. That wasn't just a library, he gasped. That was something else entirely. Elena tightened her grip on the scroll, her voice low and steady. The Codex Eterna isn't just knowledge, she said. It's a key. Jonas frowned. A key to what? Before Elena could answer, the walls around them began to glow faintly, revealing a sprawling underground passage leading even deeper into the earth. Symbols along the stone pulsed like veins carrying light. Whatever lay ahead, it was older than Alexandria, older than humanity itself. The tunnel walls pulsed with faint blue veins of light, their glow illuminating strange carvings that seemed to move when no one was looking. The air grew colder, heavier, as though they were descending into a place where time itself had no meaning. Elena, clutching the black papyrus scroll, felt an inexplicable pull, as if some unseen force was guiding her deeper into the earth. Behind her, Samuel muttered under his breath, sketching the glowing symbols on his notebook. These patterns, they're not decorative, he whispered. They're equations, star maps, gravitational alignments, and something else. Jonas, still limping slightly from the fight, scanned the rear with his rifle raised. Equations or not, he growled, I don't care what they mean. I care about what's following us. Tarek glanced over his shoulder, his voice low and urgent. They'll come. The custodians will never stop. Not while we're holding this. He gestured to the scroll in Elena's hands, its surface faintly throbbing with an unnatural warmth. After what felt like an eternity, the tunnel opened into an impossibly vast chamber, a colossal cavern stretching so high above them that their torchlight barely touched the ceiling. At the center rose a towering obsidian structure shaped like a spiral, part temple, part machine. Its surface was engraved with alien sigils, each one glowing softly, pulsing like the beat of a distant heart. Elena's breath caught in her throat. This isn't Egyptian, she murmured, stepping forward in awe. Samuel ran his hands along the engravings. It's not human, he corrected quietly. These symbols predate everything we know, Sumerian, Egyptian, even Proto-Sanskrit. Whoever built this, they weren't from here. Jonas stiffened. Not from here, as in not from Earth. Before anyone could respond, the chamber rumbled. The spiral structure came alive, its sigils flaring in sequence like a code being unlocked. The black papyrus scroll in Elena's hand burned hot, its golden threads unraveling into tiny strands of light that dissolved into the air. Suddenly, the spiral emitted a deep, resonant hum, so low they felt it in their bones rather than heard it. From above, enormous crystalline orbs embedded in the cavern's ceiling lit up, projecting vast streams of data and star charts into the air. Constellations none of them recognized hovered around them, rotating slowly, each marked with ancient symbols. Samuel's jaw dropped. These aren't just maps of the stars, he breathed. They're trajectories. Routes. Tariq's face went pale. Routes to where? Before Samuel could answer, a new sound echoed from the tunnels behind them, the metallic clatter of boots in perfect unison. The custodians had found them. Dozens poured into the chamber, their black armor reflecting the glowing projections. The leader stepped forward, his face hidden beneath a mask shaped like a falcon, its crimson eyes glowing faintly. Unlike the others, he carried no weapon, only a staff topped with a crystal that pulsed in harmony with the spiral structure. Elena stepped forward instinctively, holding the black scroll's empty frame. Why are you hunting us? She demanded. The masked figure tilted his head slightly, his voice resonating unnaturally, as though layered with many others. We are not your enemy, he said. We are the custodians of the Codex. It was never meant for your kind. Samuel clenched his fists. Your kind. You mean humans. The falcon-masked leader nodded slowly. The Codex Eterna is a relic of the first builders. It contains knowledge beyond the boundaries of your world, the power to create, to destroy, to bend the fabric of existence itself. We were tasked to guard it until the appointed time. Jonas stepped between them, weapon raised. You mean to tell me this whole library, this entire labyrinth, was built by aliens? The custodian's voice deepened, almost mournful. Not aliens. Architects. They seeded many worlds, and they left warnings on each. The Codex is not a gift. It is a test. Elena's grip tightened on the scroll frame. Then why hide it? She asked sharply. Why erase the library from history? Because your species was not ready, the custodian said simply. And now, by breaking the seals, you have awakened its signal. Others will hear it. Suddenly, the spiral machine's hum intensified, its lights strobing rapidly. Samuel stared in horror at the projections, his voice trembling. It's broadcasting. The codex is calling to something, or someone. Far above, deep in the void of space, an enormous signal pulse rippled outward like a stone dropped in water. Jonas cursed under his breath. And I'm guessing whatever's on the other end of that call isn't coming for tea. The custodian leader raised his staff, striking it against the obsidian floor. A blinding wave of light erupted, freezing the entire chamber in eerie silence. When it faded, he fixed his gaze on Elena. The codex has chosen you, he said softly. It will only answer to the one who carries its mark. Elena blinked, confused. What mark? He pointed at her hand. She looked down, and froze. A faint sigil had appeared on her skin, glowing faintly beneath the surface, shaped like the spiral of the temple itself. Before she could react, the ground shuddered violently. Cracks split across the chamber floor as debris rained from above. Samuel screamed as part of the ceiling collapsed, smashing several custodians beneath tons of stone. Jonas grabbed Elena's arm. We have to move, now. But the spiral machine roared to life, its core splitting open to reveal a swirling vortex of golden light, a gateway of some kind, humming with impossible energy. The custodian leader turned to them, his voice thundering. Go. If the codex marked you, the path is yours to walk. Tarek hesitated, staring at the vortex in awe. Where does it lead? To the origin, the custodian said gravely. To where the first builders wait. Samuel shook his head violently. This is madness. We can't just step into some alien wormhole. Elena's voice was steady, resolute. We don't have a choice. If the codex is calling something here, we need to know what, and how to stop it. Jonas gritted his teeth, glanced once at the advancing custodians, then at the collapsing ceiling. Screw it, he muttered. Let's go. One by one, they stepped into the blinding light. The last thing Elena saw before the vortex swallowed her was the falcon-masked custodian kneeling before the spiral, chanting words she couldn't understand. And then there was only silence. Elena opened her eyes. She stood beneath a vast alien sky filled with 3 moons and constellations she'd never seen before. Towers of obsidian stretched into infinity, their surfaces reflecting impossible geometries. In the distance, colossal structures floated above the ground, tethered by beams of shimmering energy. Samuel staggered beside her, his face pale with shock. This isn't Earth, he whispered. Elena took a deep breath, gripping the empty scroll frame tightly. The codex had brought them here, wherever here was. Far above, something stirred among the stars, shifting like a living shadow. The signal had been received. And whatever answered was already on its way.